Let's take a look at regular expressions. Regular expressions allow us to use some special formatting to actually do things like pattern match for things like email addresses, domain names, and many advanced ways of doing things. You can actually process and look for the special formatting that you require. Like with an email address, you might need that @ sign and the .com or .co.uk or something like that. Well, pattern matching allows us to look for exact patterns, not necessarily the exact characters themselves, but yes, you can do that as well, but also a pattern. So you're looking for words and not looking for white space, for example, where you can just grab the words that you need. So these are some of the different patterns or pattern symbols that we can use, and we're going to actually grab and see that domain names that are offered or that are entered could actually be valid. And we'll look at some of the issues as to why some patterns might work and why some other patterns might not work. We'll definitely be taking a look at that. So inside the regular expressions file, we have at the top here just a simple pattern here, and I'll explain why it works. A few patterns. Now we also have arrays of domain names that you might receive from a server-side script or something like that. I'm putting them in arrays because it makes it a lot easier to process them. So that's why I do that. So two different arrays, and we have just some standard domains here, gov.info, .com, etc. And then we have different ones here, .de for Germany, .ws, just a different thing, and an invalid one, of course, as well. .dom is not valid. So we'll look at the simple website. Now with the pattern matching, you're creating a pattern and then you're going to pass that to certain functions. So it's best to really talk about the pattern first. Now if you want to actually check to make sure you're getting a simple domain name entered into a field, for example, you want to know somebody's URL and you're only dealing with .coms, for example, in a universe of a few years ago, then we can look at this as a simple pattern just before we get complicated. We always start something off. If we want to start from the beginning of the string, the beginning of the text that we're actually going to be checking, parsing, well, you're going to use this character. This character is going to force the beginning of the line, force us to look at the beginning of the line that's going to be passed to us. And $ is going to allow us to extend to the end. And what's in between is basically going to serve as what's going to serve between that particular string. So if we deal with this caret and the $, then we're saying that we just want to accept a valid string that only contains this kind of a pattern. And what we're doing is the first three here are going to be www, and then we have a dot. But because dot is used like escaping, remember the escaping functions, we need to put a backslash there so that we can say we really want to find a dot. We don't want to do what dot does in the regular expression world. We want to really find a dot. So we're used to that by now. And then we're saying we're going to take any letter. We're not going to take numbers, a simple website, any letter up there. And we enclose it in brackets to mean we can take any letter from A to Z, but this really only deals with one letter. So it gets a little complicated to explain this, but I'm going to really give you some good details that you can use on your own, and then you can process things and look up the more advanced ways of doing things. All right, and then plus after that, that says we want one or more characters. So it's going to work with this little area here and say we want A to Z, and it's like a little loop. We can have as many as we want, but we need at least one. And then we have the dot again, and then COM, literally COM. So that's the basis of a pattern to match a simple website, like any website. There's no dashes in between though. There's no numbers, things like that. So we have to be really careful about this because this won't match a lot. And it's going to say that valid domains really are invalid, but they're not invalid. So we have to really keep an eye on that. So before we continue, let's take a peek more at some of these symbols and what they mean. Like I said, you only use this once. This is going to match the beginning of a line. This is going to match the end of a line. Dot is going to match any single character. So when we put that escape there, that's going to mean a dot. But any single character means anything. You're not going to limit things to a letter or a number or a special character, for example. And then, as I've mentioned with the plus, this is going to match one or more occurrence of that character that is preceding it. You can also take into consideration any regular expression that immediately precedes it. So it gets complicated there. That's a plus. Asterisk means 0 or more. So that it means you can have nothing there or just that pattern as far as what is preceding it. The question mark is going to match 0 or 1 occurrences of the character or regular expression that immediately precedes it. So it's a little bit different, but they all three have a similar way of working. 0 or 1 is pretty limited there. And then if you want to actually use one of these characters, you can just escape it. If you really need a $sign, then escape it so you don't confuse it with this, and that will confuse it. And like we've seen, the brackets are going to match any character inside that, a single character. And that can deal with a range like we see here, like characters, for example, or numbers. 0 to 9 would be a character, A to Z, and then lowercase a to Z means match upper and lowercase any letter. You can also add 0 to 9, and there's other things you can add for digits and things like that, word boundaries, just looking at white space or new line characters, for example, things like that. And then we have the not, which is the opposite. So if you have this with the caret and then comma, that means match anything that's not a comma. And you can do other variations. You can get very, very complicated. And then there's the or, which is going to be an or condition, so you can match something like him or her. And parentheses help to group things as well. You want to look at some more advanced examples to see how that works.